Perfection is a really good deck. I mean, I know it's not perfect, but it definitely can herald as many fairy monsters as possible onto the board. And it's no tale that this deck is really good, possibly even competitive for this format. I'm TheCaliEffect, and if you guys want to see more videos like this, then go ahead and destroy that subscribe button. But more importantly, you can destroy that notification bell because we just too strong. Without further ado, I present to you a Herald of Perfection deck profile. Alright, so looking at the stats of this deck, it's pretty similar to our counter fairy deck profile, which, boop, you can click right there and it'll take you right there. It is not that great at attack or defense, but it focuses so much on disruption and it has consistency. The difference between this deck and the counter fairy deck is that it has a little bit more recovery and it's such an awesome deck. So starting off with the monsters, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Herald of Perfection. This is obviously the star of the deck. While it is on the field, you can negate the activation of monster spells and traps by discarding 1 fairy monster from your hand to the graveyard. Now its effect can be activated inside of a chain, so you can, or its effect can be activated in multiples of a chain. So if your opponent activates multiple cards and you have multiple fairy monsters in your hand, then go ahead and discard them. You'll be able to gain their effects. 3 copies of Cyber Angel Benton. This is a card you will never ritual summon. Why? Because we don't play any cards to ritual summon it. But when it is tributed, you can add 1 fairy monster from your deck to your hand, so it's pretty important for getting all of your important cards from your deck to your hand. So we actually run 3 copies of Star Seraph Scepter and 3 copies of Star Seraph Sovereignty. The reason why we run the stick and chair combo is because not only is it searchable through Benton, it also gives you a huge amount of draw power, which is pivotal because you need cards in your hand to discard to negate your opponent's card effects through Herald of Perfection. It also provides some exceed plays that can disrupt your opponent and put pressure on your opponent that could possibly win you the game. This is a pretty good combo, even coming inside of the 2018 format. Now, this is the reason why the deck is so good right about now, and it's because of the Wave of Light structure deck. We run 3 copies of Eva, and Eva had no place in the counter fairy deck profile. I'll give you guys that. But when it's discarded, but when it's discarded to activate an effect, you can banish monsters from your graveyard that are light fairy to add light monsters from your deck to your hand. So basically, if you activate the effect of Herald of Perfection discarding Eva, go ahead and banish those monsters in your graveyard, those light fairies, to search more fairy monsters to give you Herald of Perfection. Essentially, this card plus 2 other cards will give you 5 negates outright, and it's searchable through Benton. Next is 3 copies of Manju of 10,000 Hands, no Senjus, mainly because Manju can search Herald of Perfection, Cyber Angel Benton, as well as being able to search your ritual spell cards. 3 copies of Herald of Orange Light. This is probably why you guys would be licking your chops if I were to say that this deck was budget, because we run 0 hand traps that are over the expensive, I don't know, 30 cents. Herald of Orange Light serves the exact same purpose as Psy-Frame Gamma, being able to negate monsters' effects, but even more importantly, you can control monsters on your side of the field to use this effect. So if you already don't have Herald of Perfection and you want to disrupt your opponent's monsters' effects, go ahead and pitch this Herald of Orange Light, as well as another fairy monster to negate and destroy it. And if you're pitching Evas, well, guess what? Eva can search you more copies of Herald of Orange Light. Next is 2 copies of Herald of Green Light. This game is becoming more and more reliant on field spells or spells in general. So Herald of Pure Light, or Herald of Green Light, my apologies, allows you to pitch it and another fairy monster to disrupt your opponent's spell cards, which, like I said, are very pivotal. 2 copies of Geldogra. This is a card that I really debated on running 3. It's a really awesome card at the cost of 3,000 life points, but I'm pretty sure you already got a small loan of 1,000,000 life points, so this is nothing. You can send 1 monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. Now, for you people that are new to the Ritual Herald Perfection deck profile, this is probably a little odd for you, but I'll explain it a little later why it's so good. And then lastly is 1 copy of Cyber Petite Angel. When this card is normal summon or special summon, add Cyber Angel Benton because it's the only target from your deck to your hand. It's pretty good and it's actually special summonable very easily inside of this deck. That's it for the monsters at 26. Now I can get you guys into these spell cards. Let me just pick this up real quick. These spell cards are pretty simple. We're going to start off with 3 copies of Ritual Sanctuary. By pitching a spell card, you can add 1 ritual monster or ritual spell card from your deck to your hand. Essentially, it's going to help you get Herald of Perfection. It is the reason why we don't have to play so many copies of Senju, which doesn't search either or, and we can just stick to the Manju treatment. 3 copies of Terraforming. Now, we run 3 and 3 mainly because all these cards can be fodder for your Ritual Sanctuary itself. So Sanctuary can discard Sanctuary, Sanctuary can discard Terraforming, so why not run the maximum amount of copies to get your Sanctuary, and then once you get your Sanctuary, you can start pitching other Sanctuaries, it doesn't matter. 3 copies of Pre-Preparation of Rites. Now the only target in this deck is Herald of Perfection, but you get to search Herald of Perfection and the Ritual spell card from your deck to your hand. That's like, why not play it? 3 copies of the Dawn of Herald. This card is mandatory to be searched off of if you're using pre-preparation of rights. The old route was to use Advanced Ritual Art and send like Gekiano Metagami, or send Shine Balls from your deck to your graveyard and then recurse them using Dark Factory and Mass Protection. But that isn't necessary due to the effects of Benton, through Eva, through Star Seraph Scepters and Chairs. It's not really necessary anymore. We can actually just outright Ritual Summon it with the Dawn of Herald, and it makes it searchable through pre-preparation. 2 copies of Preparation of Rites. Now this card did move up from 1 to 2 on the Forbidden list last November. So it's a really good card to be able to search our Herald of Perfections or even our Bentons and then recurse Dawn of the Herald from our graveyard to our hand if its activation was ever negated. And then lastly is 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Now Pot of Desires is an interesting card. Mainly reason why I say that is because it's a risky proposition inside of this deck. God, I can't speak in this deck profile today. Reason being is because if you banish at least 2 chairs, you're in a bad spot. If you banish double Herald, it isn't terrible because you can still make 1. So Pot of Desires is normally activated after you get off your entire combo, and then you get those 2 additional cards. The upside is that it can get you more fairies or even more recovery cards to completely ruin your opponent's day. But those more fairies, that's good. Really good. You could almost say it's perfect. That is it for the main board at 42 cards, 16 spells, 26 monsters. Next for the extra deck, remember when I was talking to you guys about Geldogra? 2 copies of Herald of Arclight. Now, when this card is sent from the extra, or when this card is sent to the graveyard, doesn't matter how it's sent, you get to add 1 ritual spell or ritual monster from your deck to your hand. So pay 3,000 life points to search a part. Kind of worth it when you need to search those parts. It also gives you access to Elder Entity Entis, and what she does is when she's sent to the graveyard, you can destroy cards on the field. So if your opponent is giving you a problematic board because they decided to go first, then summon your Geldogra, pay 3,000, send an Entis, and if you have to, send another Entis or send Herald of Arclight to get your searches or destructions. That's it that we use for Geldogra. We run 1 copy of Satellar Knight Deltaros. This is a monster that you have to make when you use the stick and chair combo because the monsters must require 3 in order to gain the full uses of your cards. It also is really good for disruption. 1 copy of Evil Swarm Ouroboros. This card is the master of destruction. It is the Exceed version of Trish, so it's pretty good at what it does. 1 copy of Utopia, S39 Utopia Prime, or number S39 Utopia Prime. This card is actually a lot better. I know I actually play it with the Utopia package just in case you guys wanted to run Utopia with it, you know, go Utopia, S39 Prime. But you can ironically make it with the stick and chair combo, and if you use Geldogra, then you paid 3,000 life points at least once, so its effect is pretty live. I just thought it was really cool to have a card like this inside of our decks, and it also fuels the Utopia lightning combo if worst case scenario. 1 copy of probably the most underrated monster that requires 3 monsters to summon. Vylon de Sigma is just nasty, snatching opponents' monsters and getting rid of really problematic threats. It's just a really good card, and keep in mind, if you're using Scepter with it, you can still destroy cards, draw cards, attach cards to him, and then he destroys cards too. 1 copy of Beako Balker, just bicking back, being boo, styling and profiling. You don't necessarily make this card that much, but it's really a winner cherries target. So is Spiral Double Helix. Totally awesome. Baguska, and the 1 random copy of Psyframe Lord Omega. These last cards are really just, like I said, at our Ghost Reaper targets, and you don't necessarily summon them. Some of them you can't summon, but you can make it if you have it. So if you ain't tricking, or it ain't tricking if you got it. That is it for the extra deck. Now let's get you onto the sideboard, and literally, as I went through the entirety of the deck, it's not that expensive. Now, yes, I'm playing the expensive versions of certain cards, but the deck isn't terribly expensive. But here's where the expense comes in and where I can give you guys some budget options. So, of course, the one copy of Maxi, pretty good if you want to draw cards. This is a very good combo-oriented deck. The best thing about Maxi is that I like to side it in when I know I'm going second, and my opponent has like a special summon heavy deck, so it'll get me all my pieces. 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This is another reason why this deck sides for that going second. If they're going second, you just put in your Ash Blossoms, that with your Herald of Orange Lights and your Herald of Green Lights should give you a pretty good green light to go. I know there's almost no substitute for Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, but one card that I really did want to put in there is some back row disruption. So cards like Cosmic Cyclone, Twin Twisters, whatever you feel comfortable with. If you're a budget player, just put in the Cosmic Cyclone instead of the Ash Blossoms. Next is 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Now, this is another one of those going second cards that you want to play when you know your opponent already sees that you're playing Herald of Perfection. So you're like, all right, we'll just side in the Evenly Matches and ruin their board. And again, it's really hard to replace those cards, but we have some awesome budget options. A really good budget option is just run 3 copies of Gamseel the Sea Turtle Kaiju. More often than not, your opponent makes 1 or 2 monsters that are really problematic, and when they make that problematic monster, you just give them a Kaiju and then go off. I mean, it kind of does beat paying at least $150 for 3 copies of Evenly Matched. If you can't afford it, I understand. So we got that Kaiju Gamseel for you. Next is 2 copies of Chaos Hunter. Card's really nutty against Trickstars, preventing you from being Droll locked Reincarnation. This is a really good card. 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. This card is really good at disrupting. Again, another going second card. And then, of course, we play the 3 copies of Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. And this card is really awesome because we have the extra deck room and nobody really cares. If there's some cards that you guys can't afford in this build, I have a couple of other suggestions. Board clearance like Raigeki, Dark Hole, and even you can run a little small Kaiju engine. That can also suffice inside of this deck. Thank you guys so much for watching another segment of The TheCaliEffect. If you want to support the best YouTube channel in the history of the universe, I have these awesome thing called Patreon. Check it out. We have so many rewards for awesome subscribers. Please like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, enjoy.